Hey guys, today we're talking about interval and set builder notation. This is just how we're writing our answers. So literally all we're doing today, guys, is practicing writing our answers to inequality problems. We're not even solving any inequality problems. We're just practicing writing our answers. So if we take a look here, everyone, as you can see, we can have inequalities. Like we could have x is greater than or equal to a, greater than a, less than or equal to a, less than b, or whatever. Or this symbol represents is equal to all real numbers. So let's break that down here. If we have greater than or equal to, what's going to happen is we're going to use a bracket. So anytime you see an equal to symbol, we're going to use a bracket. On our graph, we're also going to use a closed circle here. If it was just greater than and there wasn't the equal to symbol, I would have a parentheses on that side and we'd have an open circle. And then I want you to notice something. When it's greater than, we go to the right and we have a positive infinity. Also notice that there's always a parentheses on our infinity because you can't be equal to infinity. Infinity is just something that you can approach and get closer to. Okay? Go in the other direction. If we have a less than or equal to, we use a bracket on this side and a closed circle. But this one time my graph goes to the left and we have a negative infinity. And if it's less than, we use a parentheses because it's not equal to that point. And we use an open circle, but it still goes to the left with that negative infinity. Once again, notice that there's parentheses on the infinity part. And then here, all real numbers, that's from negative infinity to positive infinity. It just goes both directions, okay? All right, now, sometimes we have intervals that have a spot on the left and a spot on the right, and we don't have to go in like all the way to the left, all the way to the right, all the way to negative infinity, or all the way to positive infinity. So like this, if my left number is A and my right number is B and we're equal on both, we'll use brackets on both, closed circles. If they're less than, we'll use parentheses on both, open circles. If they are less than or equal to, and so we'll have a bracket on this one, parentheses on this one. You're starting to get the drift, okay? So let's get some practice in with this. There's 5 different ways for us to write out our answer. We could do it as a graph, which we've seen with the closed circles and open circles. We could also do it in inequality notation, in set builder notation, in interval notation. This is where we have the brackets and parentheses. We could also just have it verbally or as a written description. So let's take a look here at number 1. So number 1, we have the farthest left my graph goes is -2. The farthest right my graph goes is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw, it's not a very good line, let me try again. I'm going to draw my line, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 2 points on that line. I'm going to name the first point -2. I'm going to name the second point 3. And then we have to decide a few things. First off, since x is in the middle, my graph is going to be in the middle. So I can go ahead and draw my graph here in the middle. Okay? Secondly, do I have open circles at those points or closed circles at those points? Well, this one, since these are equal to, we're going to have closed circles at those points. Okay? And there is my graph. All right, now I want you to look at set notation. Set and inequality are basically the same thing. You understand me? Set and inequality, essentially they're the exact same thing. The only difference is that this one has these fancy squiggle brackets on the front and back. And it has this x such that. But notice here that this piece and this piece are the same. So inequality set notation are the same. All you have to do is put in the x such that that exists. So literally what this means is for the subset of x such that x is greater than or equal to -2 and x is less than or equal to 3. Close brackets. And so that's just a way to show what's going on there. I was talking about interval notation. So interval, my left interval is -2. My right interval is +3. Then my brackets, we're using equal to symbols, so we're going to use brackets on both of those. And then my verbal description is just all real numbers between -2 and 3, including -2 and 3. Okay? And notice this including, and it's including because it is equal to, because we have brackets, because we have closed circles, it's including those. All right, let's take a look at our next one. This one, it gives me the graph to start. I want you to notice some things for this graph. First off, we have a closed circle on that one. And then I have my graph. And then over here, I have an open circle. So let's talk about my interval notation. My left interval, how far left does my graph go? Well, it doesn't go farther left than -3. So my farthest left my graph goes is -3. The farthest right my graph goes is 4. And then we have to decide, does it equal -3? Yes, so I'm going to put a bracket there. Does it equal 4? No, because we have that open circle. So as an inequality, it's in between those two numbers. So I'm going to write x in the middle. X is going to be bigger than -3, and x is going to be smaller than 4. And I'm going to make that one an equal sign because it is equal to that -3 because it's a closed circle. And then my set notation, your set notation, remember, is the same thing as your inequality. You're just going to write squiggle brackets, x such that, and then we're going to write our inequality, and then we're going to close squiggle brackets. So we're going to have x is greater than or equal to -3 and is less than 4. And that's my set notation. And then my verbal description, all real numbers between -3 and 4, including -3 and excluding 4. Notice how it says all real numbers. You could just say numbers, but it's good to say all real numbers in between those 2 points. All right, number 3. We have a graph again. But this one, let's start with our interval notation. For my interval notation, my right interval, my rightmost interval is 3. Okay? That's the farthest to the right my graph goes. But then we have to stop and think, what's the farthest to my left my graph goes? Well, my arrow here is going on forever to the left. And if it's going to go forever to the left, that means my interval to the left is going to be -infinity. So put -infinity, remember we always use parentheses on my -infinity. And then I'm going to put a bracket on the 3 because it is equal to that 3. Okay? Then my inequality, I'm just going to write x is less than or equal to 3 because it's just going to go to the left and it's also equal to that 3. And my set notation, remember set notation is the same as my inequality, just put your squiggle brackets, x such that x is less than or equal to 3, close my squiggle brackets. And my last one, verbal. So my verbal, we're just going to say all real numbers, less than or equal to 3. And that would be my verbal description. Okay? All right, number 4. We have our squiggle brackets. This one, it gives us to us in set notation. But remember, set notation is just fancy inequality. So my inequality is going to be the same. It's going to be less than or equal to 0, or it's going to be greater than 4. I want to show you the graph on this because the graph is really cool. So if I have my graph here, okay, let's put my 2 points on here. My first point is going to be at 0. My other point is going to be at 4. This is really crazy. We're going to go, first off, at 0, we're going to have a closed circle because it's equal. At 4, we're going to have an open circle. That less than or equal to on 0 means that I'm going to go to the left, and that greater than on 4 means I'm going to go to the right. So notice how this graph goes apart. This is known as a disjunction, where it goes apart. And we can know it's disjunction because it uses an or. So anytime you see an or, it's going to go apart. Okay? And so it goes apart just like that. And I want you to notice this. That little symbol right there, that is a U. It stands for union. All right? And it's another word for or. All right? So we're going to have -infinity to 0. Check that out. -infinity to 0. And then we skip, and then it's 4 to positive infinity. So, my verbal description, we're going to say all real numbers less than or equal to 4 or, equal to 0 or greater than 4. Okay? And that's how we would talk about it there. Okay, let's take a look at our last problem, number 5. So this one, it starts off with the union. Okay? So anytime you see the union, anytime you see or, you know your graph's going to go apart. All right? So let's show our graph here. So I can take my graph, I'm going to put 2 points on there. I'm going to have a point at -1 and a point at -1. So they're both at -1. So let me rewrite this out here. Okay, so they're both at -1, but I still have a union. It is an open circle because we have parentheses here. And then we're going to be less than -1 and greater than -1. So essentially, all we're doing is skipping -1. Let me show you what that looks like on our inequality. We're going to say x is less than -1 or x is greater than -1. In set notation, same thing. We should have squiggle brackets x such that, and we're going to write the same thing. X is less than -1 or x is greater than -1. And my verbal description, we're just going to say, well, I want to show you something else real quick. There's another way that we could write this. We could write it out like this, or we could just write it out as x cannot equal -1. So you might not have seen that before, but it's literally just saying everything except -1. Okay? And that's how I'm going to write my verbal description. So for my verbal description, I'm going to say all real numbers except -1. And that's my verbal description. Okay? Ignore this. That's what we're doing tomorrow. Okay? Just got kind of thrown on there accidentally. All right, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.